Welcome to the Service to Syndication podcast, where we interview the biggest and most successful real estate entrepreneurs, investors, capital raisers in the world who have worn the uniform of this great country, those who provide services to our men and women in uniform, and other service-oriented professionals to provide you with the tool sets, the mindsets, and the skill sets to help you conquer your dreams and goals in real estate and to use this wealth creation vehicle so you can live a more successful, happy, and fulfilled life of generosity and prosperity. If what you desire is time, lifestyle, and financial freedom, you've come to the right place. We will bring to you the best real estate entrepreneurs who will give you the insights, the knowledge, experience, skills, so you can go out and crush it in whatever real estate asset class you desire. So grab a pencil and paper, sit back, and enjoy the ride on the Service to Syndication podcast. Hello, my servicemen and women and other service providers. Welcome to another episode of the Service to Syndication Real Estate Podcast, where we interview the most successful real estate entrepreneurs, investors, capital raisers in the world, where most have donned the uniforms of this great country. We aim to provide the tool sets, mindsets, and the skill sets for you to achieve your personal and business goals while using real estate as a wealth creation vehicle to help you live a more successful, happy, and fun-filled life. I am super excited today because I have Mr. Nolan Chandler, a top-notch real estate investor and attorney. Before I properly introduce our exciting guest to you, I just want to ask you for a favor. Please, if you get some value out of this interview, if you get some insight, mindset shift, if you learn a new skill, new information, receive inspiration or motivation to go out and take some action, to make some progress in your life, please share this episode with some of your friends. Send it to someone you know who might be or could be interested in real estate. Share it on your social media, post it on your wall, or share it in your stories. Help us spread our message while you help others. And for all of you who shared this episode, thank you. As mentioned, I have Mr. Nolan Chandler. He's a native of California and was raised in Southern California, where he grew up and attended college. After graduating from the University of San Diego, Nolan played soccer overseas in Norway for one season before coming back to the United States to attend law school. He attended and graduated from Whittier Law School, where he met his wife, Marie. Nathan has two beautiful children, Morgan and Wesley. After passing the California bar exam, he joined the Marine Corps in 2019 to become a Marine Judge Advocate. This is where Nathan embarked on a dual occupation. While in the Marine Corps, he practiced law in the military and simultaneously began his journey into real estate investing. While stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, he invested in 3 single-family residences. 2 are long-term rentals, and 1 is a short-term rental at the beach. Nathan has learned a lot throughout the last several years as an investor and is now ready to use that gained knowledge to help others buy or sell property to further their investing goals. When not assisting a buyer or seller in transacting property, Nathan loves to spend time with his family, going to the beach and going to new unexplored areas. All right. So again, welcome, Nolan. The first thing that I do before I introduce my guests, I ask them to walk us through their real estate investing journey in 75 seconds or less.
Okay, to try to condense it, I'll do my best. But long story short, being in the military, we bought our first home with a VA loan. So that was our first introduction to that. We were on the fence of whether to rent it, to sell it. We didn't really know. But as I got further along, I kind of started listening to podcasts, reading books. I don't remember what it was, but something struck me where I wanted to maybe explore more than just our primary residence. buy an investment property or apartment complex was the main goal. So I came home with my wife. I told her about it, and she didn't laugh me out of the room. She actually was like, "Okay, I'm willing to learn more." And so we ended up buying two other properties out there besides the primary residence. We moved from there back home here to California, and now I'm under contract with a triplex in Kentucky. Because that's I went to school there way back in the day. So that's kind of like our investing journey in a nutshell. But getting started in it was really just buying the home in the first place, kind of like, okay, this could be something that could help us in retirement. Well, if this single home can help us in retirement, what about 5, 10, 15? Is there a limit? Well, no, there isn't. But anyway, so that's kind of what got the juices flowing. And I think that's, like a really good summary of how we got started in investing.
Oh, great, great. So you're an attorney, real estate investor, military officer, realtor, and let's not forget the most important job being a husband and father. Where do you find the time?
Yeah, so people ask me that all the time because they say like, "Wow, you got how do you have time for everything?" And I want to say realistically, I don't. But what you have to do is you have to prioritize, and you really have to be cognizant of each area. So I think a lot of us, and I'm definitely at fault for this, and I always apologize to my wife, but you get so swept up in things to do in the business, things to do with work. If you have your business and your real estate, assets, then you have your work, which for me is being an attorney right now. And then you still have to do family time. That's also, I wouldn't even say equally important. That is the most important. And so I think a lot of us sometimes we get swept up in the things we need to do for our business and our work, and then the family gets kind of kicked to the side. And I remember Brandon Turner. I don't know if it was a podcast or just a reel, but he was saying like, there's always going to be tasks. You can devote 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you will never complete all tasks. There will always be something to do. So if that's the case, if there's always going to be stuff for you to do, whether it's tomorrow or the next week, always carve out time for your family and friends, because that's honestly why you're doing it. If you think about why you're doing this in the first place, it's to spend more time with friends and family. But if you're constantly doing all this work and then you're negating your family in the meantime, it really just it's undoing the whole purpose of what you're trying to achieve. So anyway, that would be my response is like, I don't find the time, but I make the time.
Understood. I totally agree. In this type of business, you have to do that. You have to carve out some time, if it's a little less sleep,
Yeah,
getting up a little earlier or staying up later at night, you have to find that little opportunity in order to push the needle forward.
right, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So you passed the bar. Why not go into practice right away? Why'd you go in the military?
So it's funny. When I went to law school, I actually didn't even want to practice law. I was doing it for business. My father's an attorney, and he said even if you go into business, having a law degree is helpful, to run and to operate. But okay, fine. But when I got into law school, I started getting a little more interested in like, okay, practicing law might be okay. But what really did it was I thought I was too old for the military when I was in law school. So I've always wanted to join the military, but when I got to law school, it wasn't even a thought in my mind because I was like, oh, I'm too old. I'm 27, I guess, when I was my second year there. And what I didn't know was that in the military, there's waivers for everything. And so the recruiter came on campus and was talking to us. And for law candidates, it's not only just accepted, it's the norm is because you're normally older. You have to go to undergraduate first, then law school. Naturally, you're just older. And so you were basically always getting an age waiver to get in. So I ended up getting an age waiver to join the military. And so I was able to use my law degree while going into the military, practicing as a judge advocate.
Okay. So just for our audience, tell us a little bit about your active, and I believe now, before we started recording, you said your reserves or something like that. Just kind of give us how long you were there and where you're at now.
Yeah, sure. So I went into active service in 2019, June. And my first duty station was Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. So I spent 3 years on station there as a judge advocate. So I rotated between different billets, jobs within there. And then once my tour there ended in about May, I was on terminal leave from May to last month. So once I came back to California, now I'm practicing law in the civil realm. So it's like contracts, property disputes, things like that. And I'm looking to transition into another firm or government agency and then continue in the reserves because in the reserves, a lot of it can be remote now with being able to do things through like Zoom, government Zoom, whatnot. But there are occasions we have to go in person, and so normally government agencies are a little more flexible with that type of reserve work rather than a private firm. They're not supposed to be able to discriminate on that. I mean, that's by law, but there's always ways to say like you're just not meeting expectations or whatever they want to say. And so typically government agencies are more open to having those who are in the reserves still be a part of the organization.
Nice.
Yeah.
So another quick question. Was joining the military like a means to an end, or was there a purpose behind it?
Yeah. So a lot of people, first of all, they have this conception that attorneys just make a lot of money. And I will definitely tell you that is not the case. I mean, there are some that do for sure, but most of them, it's like they make just normal wages like most other people. And it's like people don't really realize that. So me joining the military was not like oh, I want to go because it's higher pay. I mean, they pay you okay, but really it was just like I wanted to serve my country, and this was a way to do it. My wife, because I also fly. I used to have my pilot's license. I haven't flown in a long time, but she was like, why don't you go as an air contract to be a pilot? And then I was like, well, I mean, it would be fun, but I don't know if that's flying in the military is gonna be the same as flying in the civilian sector. Don't know. And so we were decided, let's just stick with the law degree, use it. You got it. Might as well use it. Don't put it don't let it go to waste. But so yeah, it was definitely just more about serving in any capacity. I just happened to do it as a judge advocate because I went through all that work to get my law degree and pass the bar exam. But yeah, it's just something I've always wanted to do, and I finally got the opportunity. And it took a while for my wife to kind of come on board. She wasn't super thrilled about it at first, but the more we talked about it, and she came around to it, and we both think that it's one of the best decisions we've made.
Yeah, I know for me, I came right out of high school, and I'm from Arkansas originally. So for me, it was just a way to get out of that area where I was located. And so, but once I got in the military, I started to like it, love it, enjoy it. And I spent a considerable amount of my early adulthood there. So I totally applaud you for, just wanting to serve your country, having that as your purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so for a lot of people who don't know, who may not be familiar with the military, that may watch this, what is a JAG? I'm sorry, what is a JAG officer?
Yeah, so people say JAG, so it's the Judge Advocate General Corps. There's a lot of different ways for it, but it's a military attorney, and so there are different billets or jobs within that particular MOS. So for us, there is defense counsel, so defending criminal misconduct. There's prosecutors, so you have the command that is going to be pressing charges against the service member, and attorneys would represent on the government's behalf. There's legal assistance attorneys, so they're the ones who are going to be on base. Usually they're referred to as base legal. So if you have a landlord-tenant issue, if you got ripped off at a car dealership or whatever, like usually can go to base and be like, hey, where am I at in general? They can give you some basic legal advice. And then also another huge thing is drafting wills for service members who are about to go on deployment, giving pre-deployment briefs to commands to say, hey, the SCRA gives you certain protections. This is what you should be aware of before you deploy. Get your affairs in order. By the way, draft a will. It's not the most effective estate planning measure, but it's definitely better than not having one at all. And so those are the basic services that JAGs usually offer to service members.
Okay, great. All right, so you were a JAG officer, which means that your career is basically set. So I get out.
Yeah, it's a age-old debate. Stay in, get out. There's pros and cons. For one, it's you have that steady paycheck. Week by week. Or I guess you get paid bi-weekly, but every 2 weeks exactly the amount you're going to get paid, and when you get promoted, that's exactly and obviously Congress changes the budget, so you get increases to adjust for inflation, but it is steady, reliable. You get your pension after 20 years or 30, whatever you stand. So that's the pros. The con of that is kind of exactly what I just said. What it's going to be. You're not going to expand any further than that, and so there is a risk of getting out. And So in the Marine Corps, I was around. There was a few lance corporals that I was speaking to, and they were petrified of the thought of getting out. They wanted to get out because they wanted to do, but they also knew, if I get out, what am I going to do? There's not that steady paycheck there, and so it was just a lot of fear, so I had to overcome that myself. I mean, I had a, like you said, it's a decent way forward. I mean, you got the healthcare, you got your housing paid for, you always got a job, because getting fired from the military is pretty difficult. I mean, it happens, but it's like you have to do some pretty intense things. Otherwise, you have your job. And yeah, so for us, it was like that kind of internal debate of, yeah, we can go out on our own, get a job or invest, but what if it doesn't work? We know what we get over here. Over here, it's unknown. But on the other hand, as entrepreneurs, that's what we do, is we want to take those calculated risks, because although we know what we're going to get here, what we can get over here is potentially endless, and the opportunities are, whatever you make of them. So, we made the jump, and it's scary, and it still is scary. I'm not far off. I just got off active duty like 2 months ago, so I mean, I'm not like far on the other side yet. I'm still even transitioning, but yeah. So we wanted to make the decision that we wanted to have control over our freedom, over our time, and although we have to work for it really, really hard to get that, in the military, you weren't going to have much time freedom. You have what you have to do there, and it is what it is, and that's great. And there's nothing wrong with staying into 20, 30, starting your investing on the side. There's nothing wrong with that. But just for us, we wanted to be able to get off a little bit earlier than that, and see what we can do.
Super. Yeah, because I would definitely tell anybody who's out there listening that there is always that fear. What happens next? What happens next if I get out?
Yep.
And I was there in Nolan's shoes as well many years ago. I did choose to get out, and my life has flourished. And basically, like you just said, you get out of it what you get out of it. You have to plan, number one, and then just get out here and get to it.
Right.
All right, so
Exactly.
so let's transition a little bit from the military to what prompted you to get your first property.
So we got our primary residence, and a lot of people call that as like an accidental landlord. You buy your first property, and then you're like, oh, I'll turn it into a rental. And so it's like, to be honest, that's probably what happened with this one, the first house. But we caught the bug, during our first tour there, and so the first property would be the one that we purchased after our primary. So that one was a short-term rental in Surf City, and we originally were looking at maybe some type of like duplex or something out in near the base. And we were looking, and they just weren't popping up. There weren't many. And so like, okay, but then our realtor that we were working with, she said, hey, I have a property that's over here in Surf City, which is a beach town next to base. And a lot of people use these as short-term rentals. I don't know if you're interested. And at the time, I knew what Airbnb was. Like I mean, if you're on planet Earth, you have like, what, but I mean, I did not know what it involved as an operator. And so I was like, well, okay, I'll check it out. There's no harm in just seeing. And so we got to look at some properties. We got to talk to some owners and kind of get their profit and loss statements. And I know, as a new investor, I'm even learning what a profit and loss statement is to begin with, let alone like just the intricacies involved in the purchase and sale. But anyway, so we ended up buying a property there and turning it into a short-term rental. And I would not advise this to anybody. I would advise you to actually do some decent research before going in. I always like to think that there's a balance between action and education. Don't just all education and never take action. But for the people who just go straight into action with no education, it's like, I don't recommend that either. Just do a little bit of a balance. But anyway, we just fell into this, and we learned on the fly, and we ended up making it work. But we had a lot to learn in a short period of time. And so even though we made it work, thankfully, my recommendation is, if you're going to start into something, do a little bit of research before diving in. But at the same time, don't just research forever and never take action. Just a balance there. But that's what led us to get our first property.
Okay. So if you got that one in Surf City,
yes.
Did you have a long-term plan in terms of just continuing to invest in real estate?
Yes. So once we did that, I mean, it was my plan was, this is number one, many to come. Like we wanted to make sure that we wanted to continue a good rhythm going forward. And we ended up buying another one later. It was the next year. That one we recently just sold because it wasn't doing bad, but it wasn't flourishing. It was kind of just holding its own weight. And we wanted to try to move the funds from that into something that'll hopefully produce a little bit more. So we're in the process of, we're under contract for a triplex in Kentucky. And so I'm hopefully, we're putting that down payment, moving it into that one. And hopefully that'll produce a little more cash flow and some potential equity, in appreciation.
Okay. So the one that's Insert City, would you say that's a A-type property or a B-type property?
So I would say the area is A, property is B, because the area, Surf City, the surrounding houses. I don't know if you've been to a lot of like the South Carolina, North Carolina beachfront properties, but a lot of people put a lot of money into their houses, and they have great decks, great views. The houses are all updated. Our house is not outdated, but it's not the newest updates. So it's a lot of people comment on Airbnb that it's like very quaint and very homey. And so, I think a lot of places that have all LVP and like just the bright white and like it looks really nice, but it's like you're at a beach, you're at a beach house, and this one's more like, hey, this is your home. And so we haven't updated it to the nines yet, but it is not outdated by any means. But the surrounding area is a very, very, very nice destination city. So that's how I classify it.
Okay. So let's stay here for a second.
Yeah.
Do you plan on updating it to make it like the other ones on the market in terms of Airbnb?
Yes. So we've held it for a little under 2 years now. So we're looking to build up a little bit of reserves, but I do plan on doing some updates. Like we have wood flooring. It's not LVP, but something like LVP, and then fresh coat of paint, and then maybe some trim work. But all the fixtures are pretty nice. They're not, like I said, they're not most updated, but nothing in there is outdated. That would be, not the greatest, but there's some things that we got a new deck on the property. So the deck looks amazing. And then the exterior looks totally fine too. It's just the interior, just the tiny touch-ups we want to do.
Gotcha. Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. So you just mentioned about another deal that you guys purchased. How did you guys find that subsequent deal?
So the one in Jacksonville that we purchased in 2022, that one we used a real estate agent as well. I probably should have done a little more due diligence on that property because, and it's one of the things we learned. So although we didn't really lose any money on the deal, we lost time, and time is money. And so, but a lot of people argue that the best school or the best education you can get is the school of hard knocks. And so I spent that year running a long-term rental. I had a property management company in place managing it, but ultimately I had to, let them go towards the end because they, for a few reasons, weren't meeting expectations. But we ended up saying, okay, we've got this property. Had I done a little more due diligence, I would have found out that this might not have been the right deal for us. But that's okay because I'm applying these lessons moving forward, or at least I hopefully will apply them moving forward. So there is still value in that, in doing that deal, is even though we broke even on it when we sold, you gained a lot of experience and knowledge from it. And sometimes, you hope to win more often than you lose, but you're never going to have 100% of your deals go exactly the way you want them to. But that shouldn't stop you from moving forward because hopefully you'll get more deals and those ones will do just fine. And you'll have a couple here and there that, oops, but you shouldn't let that stop you.
100%. I totally agree.
Yeah.
So you found that with the realtor, and your first home you found through a realtor. Are you nurturing relationships in those markets that you want to invest in? And how, if so, how are you nurturing those relationships with realtors, brokers, so on and so forth?
Yeah, so while I was there at Camp Lejeune, there was a meetup in Surf City, and it was called Pints and Properties. And so they host that once a month, and you basically, pardon me, you have lenders, brokers, investors, whoever, just all congregate there and grab some beers, and then there's one person that presents every month. And usually, if I had to say on average, 30, 40 people would attend in that like little restaurant bar area each month. And so, it ranged from lenders speaking, CPAs, investors talking about their short-term commercial properties. It varied every month, but I went to those as often as I could. It was almost every month that I was able to go. And so I just met people left and right. And so I still keep in touch with a lot of them, but I think it's important, especially if you want to stay in a particular market, to really get to know those people in that market, because ultimately they're going to be your eyes, ears, and they're going to be the ones you can trust. And so if you can have a trustworthy real estate agent, and eventually if you go get your own off-market deals, totally fine, but you never know, they may still have something for you. And you can at least, like, hey, I'm looking for my own deals, but this person says, hey, I know you're looking for, an eightplex in this area of town. Like, I just ran across one. Are you interested? And if you have that relationship open, it would have never come to you had you never just kept that. So to me, there's no harm in just keeping those relationships, and then you can reciprocate in whatever way, however you can provide value to them. But yeah, I think it's incredibly important to keep those relationships and to nurture them. And then if you are nurturing in your own hometown to start, that's okay too. You can invest anywhere, but yeah, I just think it's incredibly important to just keep those relationships going.
That is so true. The
That is so
relationship
true. The
building.
relationship building.
Yeah, it goes a long way, especially for someone like you
you
who's
who
doing this
doing
remotely.
this remotely.
Right.
So we're gonna
So we're gonna
turn into
turn into
the operations
the
of your current
operations of your
portfolio.
current portfolio.
How is it being
How is
managed?
it being
Because
managed? Because
for my audience,
for my audience,
Nolan is in
Nolan
Southern
is in
California.
Southern
He lives in
California. He
Southern
lives in
California,
Southern California,
but actually
but
has
actually has
assets in
assets
North Carolina.
in North Carolina.
And he just also
And
said
he
that
just
they're
also
looking
said that
to
they're looking
purchase a
to
triplex
purchase a
in
triplex
Kentucky.
in
So
Kentucky. So
how is it being
how is
managed,
it being managed,
and what type
and
of
what type of
relationship do you have with
do you have
whoever
with
is managing
whoever
it?
is managing it?
Yeah, so in North Carolina, both of the existing properties there now are being self-managed. So one's a long-term, one's a short-term. The short-term one was actually I had a short-term rental company managing it, but again, they were doing things that were just very strange and just not meeting expectations. So I ran across a guy at the meetup that I was talking about, and he said, "Hey, you really don't even need a property manager for that." He's like, "You have all these apps that you can sync together to work together, and then you just find a reliable handyman and a cleaner, and you're doing what you need to do." And I'm like, oh, I was really skeptical at first, but I did a lot of research, and then I talked to a lot of people, and ultimately I decided to do what he advised. And I'm I feel like it's just fine. I mean, the management company will charge 20% for short-term rentals, so that's a lot of your gross income. I mean, I so and then what they do is do everything that you'd be doing anyway. So for me, if you have price labs for like the pricing, or some people use AirDNA, Hospitable, which is a app that you can send out automated messages on the app for Airbnb, and then Remote Lock, which gives the codes for smart locks to the door. Anyway, you have some of those apps. They all sync together, and then they kind of sync to Airbnb, and that allows you to manage the property. Like basically, 99% of it is done through the apps. You have to put in just, hey, if a guest messages you some unique question, sure, answer it. But aside from that, you're not doing much besides coordinating with the cleaners. Hey, this is a schedule. Are you good with it? Yep. And then reach out to handyman if there's ever any issues. So the short term, I'm still doing remotely by myself. The long term, I'm using Avail. I don't know if you've ever heard of that platform, but yeah. So Avail is a remote, or I guess an online management software. So you have the leases signed through there, maintenance requests go through there, all the payments go through that platform. So I have that set up. And then because of the relationships I built before I left, I have multiple cleaners, multiple handyman that are all that so I can just call them like, hey, if there's an issue, call the handyman or one of them, call one of the cleaners for a move out clean. I have a realtor there that she's willing to go in to just do a midterm inspection and a final inspection. So those I'm managing remotely. And if you have systems and people in place, it's okay. For the property, the triplex in Kentucky, I'm going to do management on that one because I'm not as familiar with that area, nor have I developed any relationships in that area. So for that particular area, I am going to use the property management company. and I hope, I've done enough due diligence and asked enough questions to know that they're the right fit. But so that's how it's being set up so far.
Okay. So it sounds like majority of your portfolio so far, you've purchased it solo.
Yeah. So when you say solo, do you mean like with or without an agent, or are you saying in my name?
No, a partner.
Yes. Yep. So all of them so far are partners. Just the beach house in Surf City, that one we did go in 50-50 with my parents, but the other two properties in North Carolina and this one in Kentucky have been just through my wife and I.
Nice. I meet people all the time that do like the short-term rentals, and I've been running into people that do the midterm rentals. I just haven't had a stomach for that just yet. And I always tell them, like, my head is off to you for doing that, because that's huge.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a huge risk. I mean, and also my recommendation is make sure that if you are going to do a short-term rental, analyze if you can also do a midterm or long-term as a fallback, just in case for whatever reason the short-term doesn't work out. Because if short-term is your only option, if it doesn't work out, then your only option is to sell. Maybe you do not want to do that. But anyway, just food for thought.
Got it.
Yeah.
So the property in Surf City, what value adds did you do to it as soon as you purchased it?
As soon as you purchased it, so it had a very old deck. So the house was built in 1983. A lot of the surrounding houses are the same year. This is not like this is the only one. All the other ones are 2022 now. So they're all same builds, but a lot of people just put really new decks and like they redid the interiors. So for us, we did a new deck, and that made a night and day difference look on the property. I mean, the old deck was like the very brown wood, old rotted wood, and like certainly not up to code because the railing was like up to like your mid thigh at most. So like if you went to the balcony, you just leaned over a little bit, you'd probably fall over. So we made it up to code. It's got nice just like white trim and like the blue stairs. They're like light blue. I don't even know what kind of blue, but it's a very light blue. It matches the house perfectly. So that's what we did for an immediate value add. And then obviously for the interior, we decorated ourselves. So my wife went in, we put all new interior decorations in there to make it kind of like our own touch. So that was the immediate value add. What we want to do next is maybe set up a flooring, paint, and then possibly some new fixtures and stuff. So, but the bathrooms and the kitchen are all like pretty good. They're up to date for the most part. So I don't think we'll have to do any like major tearing out the kitchen and putting in new cabinetry or anything like that. But those are some of the things we have done and will do for driving up forced appreciation.
Okay, great. And so you were telling me earlier how you found your contractors just through the network there in that area. Was he able to stay on budget? He or she able to stay on budget?
Yeah. So for the contractors for the deck, we had them quote a price. They ended up going about $4,000 over because they said that there was rotted wood in several places of the deck that they didn't know until they were there to kind of pull it up. And we went about 20% or so over budget. But I've heard, horror stories of projects going way more over than that. So I was like, it's expected. And as far as timing, I don't think they went over on time really. So that's another huge issue is going over on time and budget. But so for us, a little bit over budget, but not, nothing significant. And then as far as time, I don't remember it being something that was untimely.
Okay. While you guys were renovating, did you guys find any surprises that outside of that rotted wood that you weren't anticipating?
No, because the inspection we got, we pretty much knew everything, and the house was in good shape overall. One thing that was probably on my part, my fault was the inspector did know that the electric meter that it had the box cover, it was corroded, and so obviously there's a little bit like a gap in it, and so I was like, oh, we'll address that another day. That's not a now thing. That's well. Turns out, the city came by and inspected it and saw, hey, this isn't up to code and like you need to have a new cover built on. And so we had to contact an electrician because they were going to shut off the electric. They gave us like a week. And I was like, well, a guest is there. Like, oh my gosh, like we can't have the electric shut off while the guest is there. So I ended up having to pay an electrician, and I'm sure he probably knew that it was an emergency, so he charged a nice little premium for that. But anyway, so we got a new meter put in and the box and the lid, and so it's all good. But that's something where I was like, I should have just addressed that. It was in the inspection, but other than that, no, there were no real surprises that we uncovered once we got the property.
Okay. So your triplex in Kentucky that you guys are in the process of purchasing. How did you find the team that you're buying that with?
So for the Louisville property, I looked on Bigger Pockets for the agent referral. I've had some experiences with the agent referral in different areas that I was not super happy with. But for this one, I feel like I vetted him a lot, and he had a lot of good reviews. So I ended up using him, and he's been great so far. That as far as other contacts, I've really just relied on him because he's an investor there himself. He hosts meetups there. Apparently he has a lot of different contacts there because he gave me like a whole list in the intro email about who is like attorney, CPA, property managers, lenders. So he just gave me like 5 different ones to choose from each category basically. And so I kind of just called around and been like, hey, which property manager, which lender am I going to go with? And so I've kind of relied on him to provide that team there. But if it wasn't for that, then yeah, I would have to be in the area and go to those meetups, and it's not practical. So a lot of out-of-state investors, you do have to rely on someone you trust, and then they give you referrals to people. And what really helps is that he's an investor himself. If he's an agent that helps anyone who walks through the door, it's different. But if he's an investor himself, and I asked him about his portfolio, he was telling me about it, and so I was like, okay, so these people that he's using for himself as well. Like these are the people he uses as well. And so obviously you still call and vet them and ask references. You still do your own due diligence, but it definitely helps if they give you a starting point.
Hey, thank you for tuning in to the Service to Syndication podcast. If you are a military service man or woman, government employee, or any other service related professional, this is for you. I once was where you are. As a service member, I lived paycheck to paycheck. As a government employee, I knew there was more out there for me. I tried all the get rich quick schemes. None of them worked. Then a friend of mine introduced me to real estate investing. I am a commercial multifamily syndicator who helps those who have served in the military and those who provide services to our men and women in uniform and other service-oriented professionals achieve their time, lifestyle, and financial freedom by investing passively into multifamily real estate. If you know that this life has more in store for you, I invite you to tune into the Service to Syndication podcast to learn the tools, tricks, and concepts to help you achieve the time, lifestyle, and financial freedom that comes with investing in real estate. So go over to cobbscreekcapital.us. That is COBBSCREEKCAPITAL.US and schedule a call so that we can get to know one another and see how we can work together to help you achieve your goals.
A lot of this business is just all referrals. You can't know everybody, but you can know people you trust who know people who know people who know people. And that's how you kind of build your team is you get trusted referrals. And Google reviews does great because it's like, hey, these are reviews from just the general population and gives you an idea, but it's always best if it comes from someone that you trust and they give that referral.
Yeah, I totally agree. The Google reviews, they can be skewed because I might have my Aunt Sue, my Uncle James, and half of my family to go in there like, just give me glowing reviews. But yeah, definitely if you know that you have someone that you can rely on, and just reach out like, how do you like this particular vendor? Yeah, that keeps you out of hot water a lot of the times.
Exactly. Yep.
So are you using this particular realtor slash investor vendors to do the rehab on this project?
So very likely, I've actually reached out to other contractors to get quotes. I'm going to use the ones that he recommended, of course, and the property manager also has general contractors in their property management. But I feel like I just want to adhere to my lessons learned in the past where I want to rely on their referrals and explore those options, but I want to get my own referrals or get my own, quotes as well from outside vendors, just to make sure. I always want to have at least 3, if not 4, to compare and just see if it's going to be the right fit. Or you have one contract that says, oh my gosh, you got to do the entire thing over, and then you got one that says, nah, just some, and then one that's like, you don't have to do really anything, just this. And you can compare who's telling the truth, who's not, prices. It's just a good way to kind of get the overall picture rather than just going to the first person that gives you the quote and you're like, cool.
Okay. Now, are you doing this with all of your cash, or friends and family? How are you financing these projects outside of banks?
Yeah, so we're getting a loan on the property, but as far as the actual renovations, if there are any and how large, that's going to come down to we've contacted a few hard money lenders and then private lenders.
Okay.
So if it's not going to be significant, I might just do our own cash if it's very minimal. But if it's going to be significant, then I will have to scrap the DSCR loan and go with a private or hard money lender. And then at that point, we have to just do the analysis of if we get a private money loan for a 12% interest rate and it's a 12-month note. Okay, well, hopefully we can refinance at the end of that 12-month term and it's all good. And it'd be really great if interest rates did go down next year. So when we cash out refinance, we can get that much lower rate. But that might have to happen if we have this project that's going to go significantly over what we're able to pay for cash. So yeah, the 2 options is stick with the DSCR loan, pay a little bit of cash, but if it's significant, we'll go with the private or hard money lenders.
Okay. So there may be somebody here who's watching that don't know what a DSCR loan is. Can you explain a little bit more about that and how that differs from, say, just a hard money loan?
Sure. Yeah. So a DSCR loan, debt coverage service ratio loan, that will mostly underwrite the property, the subject property that you're looking to buy versus you as the borrower. So if you have a property, they're going to look at it and say, okay, what's going to be the market rent for this? Is the property in a suitable condition? They're going to look at you in terms of your credit score, just to give like a general snapshot of who you are as just a person/borrower. But they're not going to dig into pay stubs, W-2s, tax returns. They don't do all that for like a normal conventional loan. So that's good on investment properties where you have maxed out your conventional loan options. Bottom line is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, you have a number that you can reach. Once you've exhausted that number of loans, you're no longer eligible. So then it's like, go DSCR. Or if you are a unique investor where you don't have that W-2 job, you do 1099, or you're just kind of relying on your portfolio, a lot of lenders are not okay with that. But DSCR, they're saying, hey, we're underwriting the property, not you. So with that, you will carry a slightly higher interest rate than conventional loans, but it's not significant in my opinion. It's usually like about 1% higher than what you're going to be quoted as if you're a first-time home buyer, or just a home buyer from a conventional standpoint. So that's DSCR. Hard money and private money loans, they're the same, except that hard money lenders are literally in the business to do that. That is like their business, is lending out money. Private money is your friend, your family, coworkers that are like, hey, I'd rather just not have my money in the stock market. However, if I trust you enough and you can give me a 12% return, that's usually better than putting your money in an index fund that's giving you 7-8%. So I'll put it with you. There's a lot of trust that has to go with that. So there's a lot to work out there, but those are the options. And that for DSCR, they'll cover the property. Major renovations, not so much. So you would probably have to do hard money loan or private lender if you're going to do a purchase and significant rehab.
Great explanation. So you're recently out the military, off active duty, I should say. Do you still keep in touch with some of your comrades?
Yeah, so there's a few that are still at Camp Lejeune that I keep in touch with here and there. Some that have kind of PCS to the area, and some that have just gotten out. But yeah, you develop some good relationships there, depending on how in the trenches you are with your peeps. Some people it's, hey, you just see them at the office, hey, bye, and then other people, you had to go, you deployed with them, or whatever, right? And so, but for me, yes, I still do keep in touch, and you make some great friends. sometimes, yeah, when you're in the suck, when you're in the rain, when you're in the, it's like, and you're going through that misery together, it kind of creates a little bit of a unique, special bond. And, and simply to spend a lot of time with them. Like if you're out in the field and you're spending a week or two out there, it's like you get to know people pretty well. So yeah.
Yeah, that is so
That is
true.
so true.
So when speaking to those comrades, who are
um,
not in real estate, do your conversations kind of geared towards real estate?
Yeah, so they know that I've transitioned out into like getting my real estate license here in California, and so I speak with them. And one said like, hey, if I ever move to California, I'll use you. And she's never going to come here, but I mean, not many people are really fond of moving to California. But and the other was going to get a job here, and he ended up getting another job out of state. But we do talk about real estate here and there, but I try not to like push out with my friends too much about real estate. If they ask, I'm more than happy to tell them more, but I try not to just, put it in their face basically. But, my friends do know that I'm kind of moving into real estate.
Okay. So outside of the reserves, how do you give back to the military community?
How do I give back?
Yes.
Yeah, so I've been trying to get into these programs where like you go on base and kind of give like I guess kind of like presentations and whatnot, but I found that the base is not too receptive from that because one, they have like a preferred vendor list that they have financial planners there and stuff, and so unless you are actually in the unit and you can pull out your Marines, sailors, airmen, soldiers to like, hey, I want to talk. They don't usually allow, even if you're in the reserves, like outsiders coming in. So that's hard. But that would be one way I would want to get back. And otherwise, the other alternative is to post on social media and to kind of just be like, hey, if I'm ever giving a little lesson on like the VA loan, because even service members, they know that there is the VA loan, but they probably don't know as much as they should about it. Like they know that it's like 0% down, but how many can you have? And are there entitlements? If so, how many? And then there's just a lot of things. It's like, oh, I didn't realize like you can use two, like even service members, they say like you can have more than one. You can. It depends on the situation, but you can have more than one existing VA loan. And just little things like that. But I would love to get back to the community that way. And so on my social media, I haven't gotten too far into the VA side of things or just for military just yet, but I'll for sure include that in my social media just to make sure that if service members do follow, like, hey, like these are some tips you can look out for when you're PCSing or if you're EASing, you're getting out of the service.
Yeah, I totally agree. That would be huge in order to give back in that capacity because there's so much that, especially the junior service members don't know or don't look forward to or know where to find this information. And for somebody who's been through it to post it out there on their social, that'll help them out a lot. Because I'll be honest with you, when I got out, it was quite a few years before I even realized that you could have more than one VA loan. At the same time, I didn't know. Somebody told me, and I was like, "Oh, I thought it was just one."
Right? Yeah.
All right. So, Nolan, before you became this very successful real estate person I see in front of me and attorney, give our listeners a little bit of your backstory, like where you grew up. I knew you grew up in Southern California, and how was your upbringing? And what in your past shifted your mindset into becoming the person you are today?
Yeah. So growing up, I grew up in Riverside, California, and we lived in like a normal, what I consider like normal neighborhood. Just cookie cutter type deal. And we did the normal like, hey, went to school. We had our after school activities, all that stuff. But I remember when I was in 7th grade, we had different middle school teams like baseball team, volleyball. But we didn't have soccer, which is what I played. And so I basically I went to the athletic director and was like, hey, like, is it possible to get a middle school soccer team going for our district or whatever? And he was like, you know what, that's an interesting idea. Okay, well, if you get enough people that are interested, yeah, I'd be happy to. And so what I did was I got a petition going. I circulated around the entire middle school. And I got enough signatures to where people were interested, and the athletic director ended up, you know, getting that started. So I had to wait till the 8th grade next year. But by that time, I was, I got a middle school team started. And so looking back, I feel like that was the first sign of like maybe like entrepreneurship slash like problem solving. Like I saw that there was a need for something, and instead of just being like, oh man, that I wish there was a soccer team. Like, well, I was like, hey, how can we fix this? How can this get started? And so I took the initiative to go out and get it solved. And so to me, growing up, looking back, I feel like that was one of the first signs where I felt like I wanted to not just go with the flow of things, but like figure out what's out there, And so translating that into, the adult life now is like, I feel like that kind of translates into real estate a little bit. Like, hey, I know there's a W-2. I know there's the all the way to 65 or whatever for retirement. But are there other alternatives? Let me go see, and I do think that if you want to work in your W-2 job and you enjoy it, it's something that gives you happiness and you provide value to the world, by all means stick with it. I am not trying to say don't do W-2, because I feel like there's great value in that too. But just know that if you don't want to, there are other options you can explore. And it's going to take your own grit, resolve, and sweat equity to pour into it to make sure it grows. But as long as you're willing to do that, it is there if you want to. I'm not sure if that entirely answered your question. I hope it did, but forgive me and put me back on track if it didn't.
No, it did. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So what is one belief you had as a beginning investor that has turned out to be false, but maybe holding other people back from taking that leap into investing?
What I would see is the number one thing I believe is holding back people, and that for me too, was not having enough money. The number one thing I feel like is people say, I can't get into real estate investing because I don't have the money. And although having money could help, because you can put a large down payment, but the other side of the coin is, the whole concept of leverage, right? So, you either put little or no money down, but still have control and growth of an asset. Now, I will say there are dangers in over leveraging, and I'm sure you can do a whole podcast on that by itself. But I don't encourage over leveraging, but I do encourage leveraging and being able to say, I can put 15% down, so 5% less than what they would normally. So you can find banks that will do it. It takes a little calling, but there are some banks that will be willing to. As a matter of fact, we did that for one of our properties, but 15% down. And it's like, okay, you usually have to pay private mortgage insurance on top of your mortgage payment. It's usually not much, but that's the lender saying, because you're putting less down, you're a little more risky, give us a little more so we can offset that risk. Fine. But you're putting tens, depending on the size deal, $15,000, $20,000 less than you would have had to pay than if you were to do the 20%. And so that's one example. Another example is you're partnering with people. You say, hey, I'm going to do all the education. I'm going to do all the work. I'm going to do this entire deal. You literally just be the most passive investor out there, provide the funds, and we'll split the profits 50-50 or 60-40, however you negotiate it. But that's another way to where you don't have money, but you have time, and you can invest that in that way and say, I'm going to find the contractors. I'm going to get with the property management. I'm going to manage the renovations. Like, I'm not a GC, but like I will, basically manage the general contractor. But like, those are some examples of where you don't have to have money to get into real estate investing. If you do have it, great. If you don't, those are ways you can still get into investing without having money at all or much money.
Okay. So what strategies would you recommend to a beginner that has led to some of your success?
So some of the strategies. So I would say one strategy would be to partner with people. If you want to do it by yourself, and like that's totally fine. I started off by myself, but if eventually, if you think that there's like a family member, a coworker, a friend that also wants to get into real estate, power in numbers. So either they have experience and you can rely on them and say, hey, I know you're going to put most of the money. I'll put some where you go halvesies, and then they have more experience. You kind of shadow. You might get 30 or 40%. They get 60 to 70%, but you get in and you get equity in the deal. You get cash flow, right? And so that's one way to get in. And then I think another strategy is sometimes real estate can get really complicated. And so sometimes starting with the basics is best. So if you just start off with like single family house hacking, right? You rent out one duplex, one side of the duplex, the other side you rent out. Sorry, you live in. I said it backwards. You live in one side of the duplex, rent out the other side. You're still a homeowner. You're getting used to the whole operations, but you're only managing one unit, one other tenant. And then they usually can pay for your entire mortgage or maybe slightly give you some cash flow. Use that experience and then dump it into the next deal. And now maybe you buy a quadplex. And now, so those are some strategies where, you don't have to outright go buy your investment property. You can house hack and live in one side, rent out the other. But those are just some of the two strategies I think could be helpful for new investors.
Those were great strategies, by the way.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you really didn't have a mentor. And for those of people who may not be used to a mentor or may want to go out and seek a paid mentor, how would you suggest they move forward with trying to invest in a property or learn about it?
So sorry, to understand your question, are you saying how do they know if they want to go with a mentor or not, or if they? Sorry, I might have misheard your question.
Yeah, basically, how can a person learn a little bit more about investing without having to hire a mentor?
I see. Okay, yeah. So obviously, there's a lot of gurus on social media, and you can pay the 10,000, 40,000 for their courses. Like I rarely investigate those first, but yeah, if you want to get into learning about that before ever getting with a mentor or hiring, or buying any courses, is there's a ton of free content out online. You can go on Instagram, follow people that you trust. One person I feel like that has not pushed much in terms of like salesy type thing is Brandon Turner. He seems to give just a lot of free value. People like that. And then there's just a lot of articles from various like Redfin or Zillow or Forbes. There's just a lot of like independent organizations that provide just like basic, knowledge on the house buying process, real estate investing, the market trends. So there's a lot of free content, and then there's audiobooks. I don't know if a lot of listeners are driving to and from work. I know I drove a lot, and so I just popped in audiobooks, and as long as you have an Audible account, or if you want to buy them individually, that's fine, whatever. But you can just crank out books, and there's a lot of good books out there that give you the foundational knowledge on anything you think of between multifamily investing, house hacking, financing, deals. There's just, you can kind of just go through any genre and just soak it all in. And I would say, like I said before, have that balance between education and action, but there's definitely a lot of content out there that you can pay little amounts for, like an Audible, or completely free, and just make sure that you're doing everything you can to make yourself as as educated as possible before you make your first step.
Okay. Is there any person, whether real estate related or not, that has led to your success?
Besides my wife, I feel like that'd be the obvious answer. She's supported me, through, everything. Even taking this leap, it's like she trusts me enough to do this. So, but I would say my father. So he's not into real estate investing. That's not his thing. But he has a lot of business acumen, and so I always bounce ideas off him for things. Reviewing contracts for like the loans, or contractors when they present, like their agreements, and just, he doesn't have that real estate side, but he has like the business acumen to be like, hey, the way this is written makes or doesn't make sense, or this is what I feel like could be a pro and a con. And so I've bounced a ton of ideas off him on various phone calls, just to make sure, like, hey, like, what does this sound like to you? And sometimes he puts his legal hat on, sometimes it's just his business hat, it just totally depends. But that's definitely another person where I've kind of relied on a lot of just soundboarding, right?
Yeah, two fantastic answers. Well, Nolan, it has been a blast having you as our guest today. And as we close out, please tell our listeners where they can learn a little bit more about you, get in touch with you, and learn about all the fabulous things you have going on right now.
Sure. So my Instagram, I just started that probably like maybe a month or two ago, once I got my real estate license, but I've been pushing out content. So hopefully it'll be helpful to people, but it's Nolan Chandler Realtor. And then my email is Nolan Chandler. So NOLANCHANDLER at sandiego.edu. So I check that email pretty much every hour. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, they want to correct anything I said on here, I'd be more than happy to be like, oh, yep, you're right. I'm so sorry. But yeah, otherwise love to connect with people and just try to help in any way that I can.
Awesome. Nolan, again, I want to thank you today for your time and all of the wisdom you have provided to my listeners. It's greatly appreciated. And I want to thank you, our fans, for tuning into the Service to Syndication podcast, where we want to provide you value in your investing business. Please tune in to our next episode, where we will interview another fantastic investing professional. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Service to Syndication podcast. We want you to know that we love and appreciate your support, and we are grateful about being a part of your journey to becoming a successful real estate entrepreneur. Please share this episode with a friend who you think will get a lot out of what you just heard. Send it to someone who you know is interested in real estate and dreams of having it all and being the best they can be in all areas of life. And if this was really valuable, share it on your social media stories and timelines. Thank you for watching and listening. Now go be great.